The rain had been falling since late afternoon, soft and steady, the kind that turned the streets quiet and made the windows glow warmly from inside the houses. In a small home on a peaceful street in Portland, Oregon, the living room was filled. With the gentle light of a lamp and the quiet sound of a television playing, 8-year-old Ethan Parker sat curled up on the couch with a thick blue blanket around his shoulders. His brown hair was slightly messy from playing earlier, and his eyes were focused on the television screen. But after a moment, he shifted uncomfortably. "Mom," he said, tilting his head, "why are we watching this? Dad will be back soon." Beside him sat his mother, Emily Parker. She was 36, with soft blonde hair tied loosely behind her head and tired but kind eyes. She was staring at the television, though it didn't seem like she was really watching it. On the screen, a romantic movie played. A man and a woman were walking along a beach at sunset, holding hands while quiet music filled the scene. Emily blinked and slowly looked at her son. "He might be a little late tonight," she said gently. Ethan frowned and hugged his blanket tighter. "But Dad always comes before the movie ends." Emily forced a small smile. Daniel had created that little tradition years ago. Every Friday evening, he drove down from Seattle after work. The drive took almost 3 hours, but he always made it before Ethan's bedtime movie finished. Ethan believed it was some kind of magic, but tonight felt different. Emily glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already past 8. Normally, Daniel would have texted by now. He always did. Leaving the office, on the road, be there soon. But tonight, there had been nothing. Emily tried to keep her face calm. She didn't want Ethan to feel the strange worry growing inside her chest. "Sometimes traffic gets bad," she said quietly. Ethan thought about that for a moment. Maybe his car got stuck behind a slow truck again, he said seriously. Emily nodded, letting him believe that. That happens sometimes. The movie continued playing. The couple on the screen had stopped walking and were now sitting on a wooden bench near the ocean. The man was telling the woman that he had loved her for years, but had been too afraid to say it. Ethan made a small, uncomfortable sound. "Why are they talking so much?" Emily almost laughed. "That's kind of the point of movies." Ethan looked suspicious, but they're just staring at each other. "That's also part of it." Ethan shifted again, then covered his eyes suddenly. On the screen, the couple leaned closer together and kissed. "Ooh," Ethan groaned through his fingers. "Why do people do that?" Emily finally laughed softly. It was the first real laugh she had let out all evening. "Because sometimes people love each other." Ethan peeked through his fingers. "But you and Dad don't do that much." The words landed harder than Ethan realized. Emily felt something twist quietly inside her chest. She looked back at the screen for a moment, then down at her hands. He wasn't wrong. Years ago, she and Daniel used to sit just like the couple in the movie. Late nights talking about dreams, plans, and the future. Back when everything felt simple, back when love felt effortless, but life had slowly filled the spaces between them. Work, responsibilities, distance, and lately, silence. Emily gently pulled Ethan closer and kissed the top of his head. "Grown-ups get busy," she said softly. Ethan accepted that answer easily. Children were good at trusting simple explanations. The rain outside grew a little heavier, tapping against the windows in a steady rhythm. Emily glanced again at the clock. 8:22 p.m. Still nothing from Daniel. 3 months ago, things had started. Changing it began with small things. Daniel calling less often during the week, shorter messages, conversations that felt rushed. When he visited on weekends, he sometimes seemed distracted. His mind would drift somewhere else. Even while Ethan talked excitedly about school, Emily noticed it. But she didn't say anything at first. Everyone had stressful weeks. Everyone got tired. But then there was the weekend he forgot Ethan's birthday. Soccer game. That had never happened before. Daniel arrived 2 hours late, carrying a gift and apologizing quickly, blaming a last-minute meeting. Ethan forgave him instantly. Emily smiled and said, "It was fine," but something about Daniel's eyes. That day made her uneasy. Since then, a quiet distance had settled between them, and now tonight, he hadn't come home. Ethan leaned against her arm. "Mom, guess, sweetheart, what if Dad brings pizza again?" Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe pepperoni, probably." Ethan looked pleased. "Dad always picks the best pizza." Emily nodded slowly. Daniel did love bringing little surprises. Pizza, donuts, flowers for Emily. Small gestures that used to mean so much. She wondered when those gestures had started feeling. Rare. The movie reached a dramatic moment. The man in the story had just confessed that he might leave the city forever. The woman looked heartbroken. Ethan sat up. Why would he leave? Emily watched quietly. "Sometimes people make choices that are hard," she said. "But he loves her," Ethan argued. "Yes. Then why leave?" Emily didn't answer right away. "Because sometimes love isn't enough," she thought. But she didn't say that out loud. Instead, she said gently, "Movies, like big drama." Ethan seemed satisfied with that. A few minutes passed in silence. Then, Ethan asked the question that made Emily's heart tighten. "Mom, yes. What if Dad doesn't come tonight?" Emily felt the weight of those words settle over the room. She kept her voice calm. "He will." Ethan nodded confidently. "Yeah, Dad always comes back." Emily wished she felt as certain as her son. Just then, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Both of them looked at it. Ethan immediately smiled. "It's Dad." Emily reached for the phone slowly. Her fingers felt strangely cold. The screen lit up with Daniel's name. Her stomach twisted. She opened the message. It was short. "Emily, we need to talk." Her heartbeat quickened. That wasn't the kind of message Daniel usually sent. Ethan watched her face carefully. "What did he say?" Emily forced a calm tone. "He says he's busy." Ethan leaned closer. "Is he still coming?" Emily hesitated for a moment. Then another message appeared on the screen. Her heart dropped. "I'm not coming home tonight." The room suddenly felt very quiet. Even the movie's music sounded distant. Emily stared at the words again, hoping they would change. Somehow, but they stayed the same. Ethan tugged her sleeve. "Mom." She looked down at him. "Yes. See? I told you he'd text." Ethan smiled proudly. "He'll just come tomorrow." Emily swallowed slowly. "Maybe." Ethan relaxed against the couch again. To him, the problem was already solved. Children. Believed tomorrow fixed everything. But Emily's chest felt heavy. Daniel had never skipped a Friday before, not once in 8 years, not even during storms, not even when work was crazy. He always came, until tonight on the television. The couple in the movie were arguing now. The woman was crying while the man tried to explain something. Ethan frowned. Why are they fighting? Emily barely looked at the screen. Sometimes people don't understand each other. Ethan thought about that. Like when I didn't understand my math homework. Emily smiled faintly. Yes, something like that. Ethan yawned suddenly. The long day was finally catching up with him. Emily brushed his hair gently. You should get ready for bed. But the movie isn't finished. You can watch the end tomorrow. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Okay. He climbed off the couch and walked toward the hallway. Halfway there, he turned back. Mom. Yes, when Dad comes tomorrow, can we all watch the movie again together? Emily's throat tightened. She forced a soft smile. Of course. Satisfied, Ethan walked toward his room. A few minutes later, the sound of his bedroom door closing echoed softly through the house. Emily sat alone in the living room. The movie continued playing. The couple on the screen were making promises again, promising they would never leave each other, promising they would always fight for their love. Emily watched them quietly. Then she whispered to herself, life isn't like movies. She looked down at her phone again. Daniel hadn't sent another message, just those 2 lines. "We need to talk. I'm not coming home tonight." Outside, the rain kept falling, and for the first time in many years, Emily Parker felt a quiet fear growing in her heart, a feeling that something in her life was about to change. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know what Daniel would say, but deep down she had this strange feeling that tonight was the beginning of something painful, something unexpected, and somewhere beyond the quiet rain and the empty road leading to their house, a future was slowly moving to our herd, one she never imagined, one that would soon test her heart in ways she wasn't ready for. Morning came slowly to the quiet house in Portland. The rain from the night before had stopped, but the sky was still gray and heavy. The neighborhood streets looked calm, and the air carried the cool smell that follows a long night of rain. Inside the Parker house, the silence felt different than usual. It was not peaceful. It felt empty. Emily Parker stood in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker as it finished dripping. She had slept only a few hours. Most of the night she had lain awake in bed, replaying Daniel's message again and again in her mind. "We need to talk. I'm not coming home tonight." Those 2 sentences had felt simple when she first read them, but the more she thought about them, the heavier they became. Daniel had never skipped a Friday visit before, not once in 8 years. Something had changed, and Emily could feel it clearly now. She poured coffee into a mug and tried to focus. On the morning routine, Ethan soon walked into the kitchen wearing his pajamas, his hair sticking up in every direction. "Morning, Mom," he said sleepily. "Good morning, sweetheart," Emily replied, forcing warmth into her voice. Ethan climbed onto his chair and grabbed a cereal box from the table. "Did Dad come home late?" he asked casually. Emily paused for a moment before answering. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want Ethan to worry. "No," she said gently. "He had to stay in Seattle last night." Ethan poured cereal into his bowl and nodded. "Work again, probably." Ethan shrugged like it was no big deal. Kids were quick to accept simple answers. "Maybe he'll bring double pizza next time," he said with a small smile. Emily smiled faintly but didn't respond. She watched Ethan eat his cereal, and for a moment she felt grateful that children didn't carry the same heavy thoughts adults did. A little later, she drove him to school. Ethan talked the whole way about a science project he was excited about. His voice was cheerful, and Emily listened carefully, nodding and encouraging him. She didn't want her worries to steal his happiness. When they arrived at school, Ethan grabbed his backpack and opened the car door. "Tell Dad I said hi when you talk to him." He said, "I will," Emily replied. Ethan ran toward the school entrance with the fast energy only children had. Emily watched him disappear through the doors, then sat quietly in the car for a moment. The silence returned. She took a slow breath and started the engine again. Back home. The house felt larger and emptier without Ethan's voice. Emily walked through the rooms slowly, unsure what to do with herself. She tried cleaning the kitchen. She wiped the counters, washed a few dishes, and organized the mail on the table. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Daniel. Why had he suddenly asked for space? Had something happened at work? Or worse, had something happened between them? The idea made her chest tighten. Emily pushed the thought away and picked up her phone, hoping for another message. But the screen was quiet. No new texts, no calls. Nothing. After a while, she decided to step outside to take out the trash. The cool air felt refreshing after the heavy feeling inside the house. She walked toward the garbage bins near the driveway. As she lifted the lid, she noticed movement next door. A large moving truck was parked in front of the neighboring house. Several boxes were stacked on the lawn. The man was carrying another box from the truck to the porch. Emily paused. That house had been empty for months. She hadn't heard anyone mention new neighbors moving in. The man set the box down and stretched his arms as if his back hurt from lifting too much. Then he turned and noticed Emily, standing nearby. For a moment they both looked at each other. The man gave a friendly smile. "Hey, neighbor." Emily blinked, slightly surprised. "Oh, sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't realize someone was moving in just today," the man replied. "I'm still figuring out where everything goes." He walked a few steps closer, brushing his hands against his jeans. "I'm Michael Carter." He added. Emily nodded politely. "I'm Emily." Michael looked around the quiet street. "Nice neighborhood," he said. "It is," Emily replied. There was a short silence, but it wasn't awkward. The calm morning air made the moment feel simple and natural. Michael rubbed the back of his neck. "Quick question," he said. "Is there a decent coffee place around here?" Emily raised an eyebrow. "There's a cafe about 2 blocks away. They make good coffee." Michael smiled with relief. "That's exactly what I needed to hear. I've been driving since 5 this morning." He gestured toward the pile of boxes. "And apparently I own more stuff than I thought." Emily glanced at the boxes and laughed lightly. "Moving always feels like that." Michael nodded. "Tell me about it." For a moment, Emily felt something unusual, a small sense of normal conversation. Something she hadn't experienced in a while. Michael noticed the trash bag still in her hand. "Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your morning." "It's okay," Emily said. Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The sound instantly changed her mood. Daniel. She knew it before even looking. Her stomach tightened as she pulled out the phone. The screen showed his name again. Michael noticed the shift in her expression. "Everything all right?" he asked kindly. Emily quickly locked the phone without opening the message. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Just something I need to check." Michael nodded respectfully. "Well, I'll let you get back to your day," he said. "But if you ever need help with anything, I'm right next door." Emily gave a polite smile. "Thanks, Michael." Returned to carrying boxes while Emily walked back toward her house. Once inside, she leaned against the door and looked down at the phone again. Her hands felt slightly shaky slowly. She opened Daniel's message. The words appeared on the screen. "Emily, I think we need some space." Her chest felt like it had suddenly dropped. Space. The word echoed in her mind. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of memories. Laughter, arguments, birthdays, late night talks, raising a child together. And now, space. Emily sat down on the couch slowly. She stared at the message again, hoping maybe she had misunderstood it. But the meaning was clear. Daniel wasn't just busy. He was pulling away. A quiet sadness filled the room. Emily remembered the early years of their relationship. Back when Daniel used to surprise her with weekend trips or show up with flowers for no reason. Back when their conversations lasted until midnight and they laughed about everything. When had that changed? Had she missed the signs? Had life slowly built walls between them without her noticing? A tear rolled down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. She didn't want to fall apart. Not yet. Not while Ethan still believed everything was okay. The house felt silent again. But suddenly, it's a soft knock on the door. Emily frowned in confusion. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stood and walked slowly toward the entrance. When she opened the door, Michael stood there holding 2 coffee cups. Emily blinked in surprise. "Hi," he said casually. She looked at the cups. "What's this?" Michael lifted one of them slightly. "Peace offering from the new neighbor," he said. "I figured everyone needs coffee in the morning." Emily stared at him for a moment. The gesture was simple, but unexpectedly kind. "Thank you," she said softly, taking the cup. Michael leaned lightly against the doorframe. "I stopped by that cafe you mentioned," he explained. "Turns out you were right. It's good coffee." Emily took a small sip. It was warm and strong, exactly what she needed. Michael studied her face for a moment, noticing the sadness she couldn't completely hide. "Rough morning?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated. She didn't know this man. He was a stranger, but something about his calm voice felt sincere. Just life. She said quietly. Michael nodded like he understood. Life can be complicated sometimes. Emily looked down at the coffee cup in her hands. Yes, she said softly. For a moment they stood there in comfortable silence. The gray clouds above the neighborhood slowly shifted, and a little sunlight began to push through. Michael stepped back slightly. Well, I won't keep you, he said. So I still have about 50 boxes waiting for me. Emily smiled faintly. Good luck with that, Michael laughed. I'll need it. Before leaving, he looked at her again. If you ever need help or just someone to talk to, right there, he said, pointing toward the house next door. Emily nodded. Thanks. Michael walked back toward his yard, and Emily closed the door gently. She leaned against it again, holding the warm coffee cup. For the first time since reading Daniel's message, the heaviness in her chest eased just a little. Not because her problems had disappeared, but because someone had shown her a small act of kindness. Sometimes life didn't change in big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it shifted quietly, with something simple. A neighbor, a cup of coffee, a small conversation. On a gray morning, Emily walked back to the living room and sat on the couch. She looked at Daniel's message again, then slowly locked the phone. Whatever was happening in her marriage, she knew one thing clearly now. Her life was standing at the edge of change. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if Daniel would come back or walk away completely. But somewhere just a few steps away, in the house next door, a new neighbor was unpacking boxes and starting his own chapter. And Emily couldn't help feeling that their stories had crossed paths for a reason she didn't understand yet, but one that would soon begin to change everything.